Hello, my name is Rainer Hanekamp. I'm a trainer and consultant at Angular Architects, and in this video I want to show you Angular 14.1. Now 14.1 is the first minor after the major 14 that brought us standalone components and typed forms. With standalone components we don't have to declare our components, pipes or directives in an ng module anymore. If you want to have more information about the major or standalone components, then I would highly recommend to watch my video migrating to Angular 14. Since 14.1 is a minor release, we can expect new features with fully backwards compatibility. Now what are these features? The major ones and the ones that I'm going to show you in this video are the extended inject function, the canMatch router guard, the standalone alternative to the CommonModule, and also a new way on how to set an input property to a component reference, which will also automatically trigger the change detection. Let's start. Alright, so we see here our application which lists some holidays. If we take a look at the component, we see that there is this observable in place coming from the holiday service itself. And if we open the holiday service, then we see that the holiday service is depending on two different elements. The first one is the HTTP client and the other one is an injection token. Now, this can be changed with the new inject function, which is already available since 14.0, but with 14.1 it got extended with some further features, and now I would say it's fully production ready. There is actually a very good video from Alex Rickerbo, member of the Angular team at Angular Nation, where he explains all the different arguments why that inject function, as far as I understand it, should be preferred over the constructor-based version. So let me first show the inject function itself so that we have a clear picture. Everything I have to do is that I have to say, well, I have an HTTP client. This is just a property that I need, and then I call inject and say here, please give me the HTTP client itself, and then I can get rid of it from the constructor. Okay, and I can do more or less the same for the injection token as well, but there is one thing I want to show you. With injection tokens we have the problem that they are not type safe. So I can say here that is a number, it's a boolean, I can do whatever I want. The TypeScript compiler will not complain, although the injection token itself is actually typed with string, but it doesn't help us here. If we use the inject token, then this changes, because now if I say I have a base URL and I don't even have to define a type, it's just type inference here, then I just say I want to inject the base URL, can get also then remove it from here, and if I take now a look, it clearly tells me yes, this base URL is of type string. I know that. If I say it should be of type number, then I'm getting already a compilation error. So this is one very good thing. And you see here some other thing, it's the optional. So the way how this works is that the base URL can be set. If that's the case, then we just use the value from that one to request the data. Otherwise, we use some fixture data directly and are returning an asynchronous observable instead. Now this is the reason why this injection token is set to optional, and we can also do the same thing with the inject, because it has a second argument where we can pass different parameters. Well, and one of them is of course the optional, where I can say yes, that one should be true. And now I can actually remove the complete constructor. And it should of course still work. So let's quickly check. Yes, holidays are still there. Now, what are the advantages of this approach? As Alex mentioned or explained, and this is quite clear, when your architecture or when your application consists or makes heavy usage of inheritance, class inheritance. So when I say, for example, there is another service which extends from holiday service, then that other service, of course, needs to fetch all the dependencies for its own, but also for the holiday service itself. So the constructors are just getting overloaded the more levels of hierarchy we have, more or less. So this is one argument. The second argument is that now the constructor, we cannot see from the outside anymore, just by looking at the constructor, what dependencies that holiday service has, for example. So this is also a very good thing. And of course, from my personal perspective, the main advantage is the type safety of the injection tokens. So this is really wonderful. Well, just try it out, the new inject function, and let's just see if it suits you or not. There is also another option, because the inject function, you can't just use it everywhere. You can use it in the constructor, or as I did it here, when I declared the component for the first assignment of the value. In these cases, the inject function will work. If I would decide, or if I want to do this in the load function or in the engine init, which we don't have here, but in some other places, kind of lazy injecting, then it is also possible. For that, there exists the environment injector. So what you can say is, I want to get the environment injector like this. And then theoretically, I could say here, injector, or this injector, run in context, and then I would have to add this code inside of this function, and then I can use the inject function inside of the run in context. Otherwise, just leave it as or just do it as I have done it here. I think in the most cases, this is the way how we can use it. Everything's good? Well, not really. There is one disadvantage that you should be aware of, and this is when it comes to testing. So I have here a unit test in a very special way, and this unit test doesn't use a test bed. So what we could have done in the past with constructor-based injection, we just instantiated the class on the test on our own. We created our mocks, called new, and then we just did our test. In comparison with the testbed-based tests, they are much faster, but of course we see here that now we have an issue because we need to get access now to this inject function. To make it short, with Jasmine, it's a little bit hard. As far as I know, with Jasmine you can't do this at the moment. That's why I'm using Jest in this case. And the way how it would work in Jest goes like this. It looks a little bit hacky, but you have to say you're importing everything from Angular core in this case, because this is where the inject function comes from. And then I create a spy. So I say just spy on the Angular core, and I want to spy the inject function like this. I call this injector spy. Now, what I can do now is that I say, well, if the injector spy is called, then I want to mock the implementation. So I now rewrite my own injection function or inject function, and I say I'm getting a token. This is the argument. That's the type is the provider token. In this case, I say unknown. Well, and then I need to come up with conditions. So I have to say we have these two different dependencies, the HTTP client and the injection token. I say if the token, if it is an HTTP client, then return the mocked version that I used here. So I use here create spy from class, which comes from a library called just autospies that just automatically generates a full spy or a full mock of my HTTP client. So I just say here return that one. If the token is actually the base URL, then in my case I want to return, what do I want to return? An empty string. Yeah, there it is. And I want to return an empty string. And if I want, or if my application injects something else, then I need to throw an error where I say unknown token, something like this. And then after that, I can just reuse, I can just instantiate this holiday service. Again, the constructor comes without any arguments, and then this would do it. Of course, you would never, or you would not write this code for every test. You would come up with a generic function, something like this. I have created one actually. It's called mock inject, like this. And then I can say, well, I want to mock the HTTP client, and I want to use the HTTP spy for that. And then I also want to mock a second element, which is the base URL, and in this case, just return an empty string. If you're interested in this, this is the name of the library, and I think it clearly is a reduction of code. It makes the inject token also testable without the testbed in this case. So after the inject function, we have another feature, which is the canMatch router guard. Let me quickly show you something. So we have here our home page, more or less. And the way how this works is that there is a component, which is the home switcher component. Because what we have in our application is a feature toggle where I can say I want to use a new layout or I want to use the old layout. Now the way how this is decided is that I again have some kind of injection token, could use here the inject function as well. To quickly show you what the new layout looks like, I need to go into my environment, and here I say new layout, I say true, and then we will see that the home page looks a little bit different, but yeah, that's just a new look. And the way how this got implemented was that I had to come up with a wrapper component that had these ngIfs inside of its template. And this is exactly what the canMatch router guard can improve now, because we don't need to write a wrapper component anymore. We can do this directly via the routing configuration itself. So I need to go into my routes, like this one. And you see here already have a path. This is the home path to the switcher component. Now what I can say is that I want to use the old one, the old home component, and I want to use the canMatch guard for that. The canMatch guard doesn't have to be a class or an Angular service. I can also come up with a normal function in this case. So I can say, yes, there is this function in place. I can use the inject function here as well. So I say I want to get this new layout directive injection token. And if that one is false, then I want to show the home component. So this would lead me to this. And then I can go on and say, okay, I want to duplicate it. And if the new layout is true, then I want to use the other one, the home new component. And as a consequence, I can now go on and remove this home switcher component. It's not required anymore. Okay. So if we go back to our home, we see everything's working. Let's quickly check environment, say false, and then we're getting the old homepage. So that's more or less the canMatch router guard. So the next thing is the alternative, the standalone alternative to the CommonModule. What does this mean? Well, let me quickly open a component, the simple holiday cards. And you see here it's a standalone component, and it's importing the CommonModule. So the CommonModule is the module that we find in most of our ng modules, but also standalone components. Now what the CommonModule provides us is with an ngIf, an ng4, an ng style, or an async pipe, a JSON pipe. So with all these things that we normally need to have in a component. Now the standalone alternative would be that I can remove my CommonModule and I only import those features that I really need. So I'm not importing the complete bunch or the complete set of all directives, even if I don't need them. I only import, in my case, two elements or two things, and that's the ng4 directive and also the ng style. And the way how it works, I mean, IntelliJ is here already providing me with a suggestion on how to do this. Is an ng of 4 off. This is the first directive, and the second one is the ng style. I mean, with larger components, we can expect that the imports will grow in size. Where before we had only one common module, we can have 4 or 5 in the standalone version, the standalone alternative. I think the future will show how we are going to deal with a set of directives that we need to use all the time. If we create, I don't know, an own variable that contains them like the CommonModule did, or if we just keep it like this, we will see. The future will show it. Alright, and now about the last feature, which is the possibility to set an input to a component reference, and that new way also triggers automatically the change detection. So if we take a look at our application, I just clicked on holidays, we see that there is nothing, it's just an empty screen. Let's go back to our holidays component. Why is that happening? Well, the holidays component is also using the new layout injection token, and in this case I have already set it to true. Now, I'm using two different components to show them. So we see here that we are creating a component with a view child, and we say here, if the new layout is set, I want to use the simple holiday cards component, otherwise I want to use the default one. Why do I have to make this so complicated when we have already seen before that I can use the canMatch router card to do that? In this case, it's a little bit different, because the holidays component acts as a container component. So the container component is responsible to fetch the data and to prepare it for the actual UI or presentational component to do the rendering. So obviously the holidays or the container component is always linked to the router configuration, so I can't just switch it. And that's why I need to load the component dynamically in our case. So we see here I'm fetching the view child like this, and you have already seen it. Then we say here, depending on the injection token, what it returns, I'm defining here the component that I use, and then I use a subscription against the observable, set the holidays, and then I'm triggering the change detection. Now in the past this was always a problem, especially with the change detection, because it didn't always work, or we had to find some ways on how to do this. The reason why it's not working this time with the simple holidays card is because it has the change detection set to on push. That's not all of it. We also have here an ng on changes. So what this card or what this component does, that it doesn't directly use the input property, but it uses the input property to come up with a derived type with the actual view model, and that one is used in the template. So we see here I'm listening for the on changes, and then this view model is reconstructed. And also of course used in the template here. Now, I can now try to fix this somehow, or with 14.1 I can make my life a little bit easier, and I just use the new function setInput. So I just need to say holiday cards, this is the component reference for the component itself, and that one has now setInput, the new method. And here I can say I want to set the property holidays, and I of course want to use this variable. And then I can get rid of this line and also of course of that one. Reload it, and you will see that now the new holidays component is rendered and everything is working just fine. This, as I said before, this might be something which is more relevant to a library author, but when you're writing tests, you might also fall into some issues with this component here. So the test for the simple holiday cards, that one, at the moment it's not really working. Let's just check what we do here. So first we create some holidays, and then we are just creating the component. You see here also that I'm trying to override the change detection, so this is a very old trick. And well, then I just set the holidays to the component instance itself, rerun the change detection, and hope for the best. So when I say I want to run this test, then we will see the result, namely that it is not working. But again, I can make it a little bit easier. So first of all, I don't need to override the component itself. I can leave it as it is, and I just do the same thing that I have just done before. Instead of directly accessing the property, I'm telling Angular, hey look, you need to go to the component reference, set the input, holidays, and I just set them here. Of course, I need to manually call the change detection here as well. Not as well, but in the test it is required. In the application it's not. Let's rerun the test, and it should work this time, right? So you see that the setInput is really making sure that it even with on changes, with on push enabled, that it is also running the right lifecycle hooks, and that the component renders as it should. Okay, so that's it for this video. If you want to have more information, then there is a further reading list at the description. If you have any questions, then please don't hesitate and just ask. And we will see each other in the next video when the next minor 14.2 comes out. Until then, thanks for watching and goodbye.